Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled How to Utilize Utility Meter Readings to Create Customer Energy Bills. I guess the title explains what this webinar is about. But if I just show you what's coming up in this webinar. So we're going to discover the options available in EliteParks to create meters for different utility supply types and control the income from them. Chris is going to demonstrate how to set up the meters for supplies to a plot. And you can see for yourself on this demonstration how you can record meter readings and bill owners for the supplies consumed. So it's a really handy functionality to know how to use in EliteParks, and hopefully it will help your maintenance teams and make your tasks more efficient. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris now, who'll provide a live demonstration, and there'll be some questions at the end as well. So if you have any questions, please put them in the question box that you have on your screen, and we'll endeavour to answer them at the end. But yeah, in the meantime, just enjoy the webinar from Chris. I'm just going to hand it over to him now.
Hello and welcome to this Elite Dynamics webinar, where we're going to take a short dive through the setup and usage of utility meters facilities within EliteParks. So the first thing we're going to look at are the aspects of setup needed to get the facility working at its best. So the first thing we set up is done at the park level. So we've logged into the Anglian Forest Golf and Country Park record, and in park setup we have meter types. Here we can see that we have 3 meter types already set up, one for electricity, one for piped gas and one for water. We can see in this column there is a default maximum meter reading value, and this is a default that sets the number of digits that a new meter would get before it rolls round back to 0 to make sure the bills don't get too high if it just keeps running on and on and on. The next thing we store is the price per unit. Then there is a direct posting group to cover the unit pricing, and in the direct posting group we control the general ledger code where the income gets posted to from invoicing, and also the VAT rate that gets charged. Then, should you need it, there's an admin charge amount. Some utilities are allowed to charge an admin charge or a meter reading charge, and then there is a dedicated slot for the direct posting group to do with the admin charge. It might be the same, but it can certainly be different. So these are set up for our park coded AF. The next thing we need to do is actually put meters against the plot records. So let's go back to our roll center and look at some plots and see what that looks like. So let's take this plot here, 0123. We've just decided that we're going to put metered water into this brand new concrete plot. So we go to the setup for the plot, and we can see there's a button in the ribbon for the meters. So in our scenario we already have the electricity and gas meters fitted, but we've decided now we need to add our water meter. We would click on new, drill in, and here we can see that from the part record we have our water meter record that we can set up. Tab forward. And we can see that we have a meter number series set up, and that is automatically populated when we move off the record. So this plot now has 3 meters, one for water one for electricity and one for gas. Essentially, you can have as many meters as the sorts of utilities that you serve the plot with. The final bit of setup that's needed is a meter reading batch. So on our roll center, we have some actions, and under the meters, we can see there are meter reading journals. Now each journal is taken in a batch, and we recommend setting up batches to cover each of the meter types, but there are several ways you can do it. We've certainly seen it done by park, although because the park code on the journal is locked to the logged in park of the user, that tends to be not needed these days. So here we can see I have got some meter readings filled in already, but I'm going to discard those for the sake of this demonstration. We can manage the lines already on the journal, and we're going to delete these because it's time to do a fresh reading. So in our little scenario, we decided that we were going to fit a water meter to plot 0, 1, 2, 3. So on this journal, I'm going to switch it to the water, and I'm going to add an opening read for plot number 0, 1, 2, 3. So we drill into the plot, choose our meter number for the water. That then fills in the basics for the rest of the line. And here we see we have reading types. So if I look at the options available, we have opening reads, normal readings, and closing reads. So for this little scenario, I'm going to choose the opening read. We then go to the source type. The options provided are an internal reading, where our own team take the readings, customer readings, where the plot owners take their own readings, or third party, where perhaps we get a third party contractor to go around taking the readings, or indeed a third party contractor might fit the new meters and provide us with a reading after testing. So for an opening reading, we've got a new meter, hasn't been read before, so the previous meter reading 0, and we'll say after a short bit of testing by the fitting engineer, there was 5 units rolled around on the meter. We can specify the reading date. There's a calendar drop down. So let's say it was taken last Friday. The reading user ID defaults to the user filling in the form, but you can put in another reader. Now for an opening read, we don't need to bill the owner for this plot, and indeed this plot doesn't have an owner yet. So what we do is when we want to invoice, we can tick this invoicing box, or in this case, leave it unchecked. When you add meters one at a time, it defaults to being unchecked. When you fill in the journal as part of a batch, it will default to being invoiced, because it's sort of the design idea is that you fill in the batch for the standard reading runs. We can see here the unit price and the estimated amount, but because of the sort of reading we're doing, we're not going to invoice this particular reading. If this plot was owned, we would see the completed deal number that applied. Okay, nice simple little scenario, so let's post that reading in. Okay, so for our second example, I'm going to switch to our electricity batch. Almost totally universal electricity is metered, I think. So we've seen how to add them one plot at a time. Well, let's populate the journal en masse to save us time and effort. So under process, I'm going to choose populate journal. And here we get a request screen that we can fill in to give us the settings we need on our readings. So we can choose to have the entire journal filled in with either opening, reading or closing. I'm going to choose readings, and we can default the entire journal to internal, customer or third party. I'm going to say that our own maintenance team did all the hard work, and they did it last Friday and have brought the results for us to type into the computer today. The park code defaults to the logged in park, and I'm going to choose the park meter type of electricity. Now, just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to limit the number of plots that I take readings for. And I can do that using the drop down, and I'm going to take through to 15E. So I'm going to choose my first plot. 2 dots gives me a range. 015D gives you an idea of the possibilities. If you leave it blank, it will be all plots for the park coded AF with meters of the type electricity. So here we can see I now don't have to type in all of those plots one by one. Excuse me as I move around the screen. And we're going to now take some readings. Now I notice, of course, that on plot 0123, I don't have a previous meter reading journal. So although we've defaulted the sort of reading, you can change it line by line. So here it's clear that plot 0123 needs an opening read, and that is not going to be invoiced. We can see completed deals against 2 of the plots, so we know that owners on those plots could get invoiced from these readings. So we're now going to fill in the current meter reading value. So let's say a small bit of testing gave us a read. Let's type in some hypothetical consumption numbers. Now you can see what I did here was I typed in a number significantly lower than the previous meter readings. And here you can see what would happen based on a roll round number of 5 digits. We can see that this meter has gone all the way to a much lower number, and so the system has gone, hang about, this is a 5-digit meter, I must have gone all the way through to 999999 and back round again. So it is well worth watching as you fill in these meter readings, and we can see, of course, this will produce a ridiculous bill. So here I'm going to go finger trouble and make my correction. Just some hypothetical readings. We finish the batch. Review before posting, making sure we're completely happy. So I'm now going to post these in, having checked for errors. Post the 5 lines for electricity, and the meter readings are posted. And I go back to my roll center. Well, what we can now do is make sure we review the meter readings that are in the system, and we can do that by searching for, in the search bar, meter ledger entries. Spelled correctly. So we can see we have a reports and analysis entry under the archive for meter ledger entries, and here we can see all the entries held in the system. You can provide administrator permission to sufficiently senior users to allow the editing of this for some aspects of this screen, but of course you wouldn't normally do that for most ordinary users. Now then, I want to have a look for what's due to invoice. So there was a predefined filter that I could use, but we can see it's invoice, yes, invoiced, no, part code AF, which is what I'm logged in for, and the meter type of reading. So these are all the readings that could possibly be invoiced. What we can see, however, is we've only got completed deals for 4 of the 6 readings, so we only have owners on 4 of the 6 plots. So it's not going to generate sort of non-customer bills for other plots. So from our role center, I'm going to search for meter invoicing, and there's a dedicated processing report that is going to set up our invoices for us. So I'm going to choose the document date. Well, the readings were done on the 1st, so I'm going to have a document date of the 1st. But just to prove the point, you can have a separate posting date, and this is the date I've done the work. You can choose the appropriate payment terms, and you can show a discount breakdown if necessary, usually not for your meters. So we're going to go with part code AF. Now I know the meter readings I've done. So I'm going to give it the range of plots. Now, just one point to note, having filled in this screen, the next time we use the processing report, we can see here the last used options and filters will be applied, which means we don't need to keep remembering, for example, the payment terms and not to put a breakdown and so on. And that's for each user. So for the administrator at part code AF, it would remember what they put in last time, whereas the administrator on a different park would have their own park standard. Now we can usefully see here that we're going to get a pre-bill report or an invoice generated. So I'm going to choose the pre-bill report and I'm going to press OK. And a PDF has been generated and loaded into my downloads folder, so I'm going to have a look at that. And I can see a couple of bills have been generated for the plot range that I chose. And here we can see that these 2 plots had a per meter, a per unit charge, but have also been set up to have an administration charge of £15 added. So I'd review these figures, and if they're correct, I can go back to my EliteParks screen and run the routine again. So meter invoicing. Here we can see the previous settings still populated, saving me just that little bit of time. I press OK, and this time I leave the option as invoice. So we have 2 invoices created for the range that I selected. I'm now just going to go and review those invoices. So from the pending sales invoices list, I'm going to sort my invoices by descending number because these are the 2 new ones I've just created. So let's look at invoice number 130 for customer 36. We can see the normal general parts of the document, address and so on. And here we can see the narrative and layout of the invoice that's going to be posted. We can then see that because we're charging consumers gross prices, we now get the breakdown between the revenue and the VAT for the overall price to the consumer of £46. And then you could simply post your range of invoices using the post batch facility. But you'd certainly want to make sure that you use the pre-bill report to check it and probably given it a definitive check once and for all at the end. We always recommend, for example, taking a good sample of a batch of invoices and using the preview posting facility to get an extremely clear idea of where the revenues, VAT and so on are going to be going in your books. So once they've all been posted, you can deliver them with your usual method, be that Continua or good old post and via the Royal Mail. But hopefully we've been able to demonstrate here that the meters facilities be quite comprehensive and really quite simple to operate. It gives you a really good controlled way of getting that revenue build in a systematic manner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was really, really informative, and hopefully that's given a few of our customers some tools to use at their fingertips. There has been a few questions that have come in. So if I just start with the first one. So Chris, can we put all the readings for a plot onto one invoice?
Yes, you certainly can. Kind of didn't touch on it in too much detail in the demonstration, but basically until you run the meter reading invoicing routine, the readings that you're entering into the system accumulate. So let's say for argument's sake, you have a batch for your electricity, a batch for your pipe gas, and a batch for the metered water. If you entered the data for each of those batches, maybe even over a couple of days, as long as you haven't run the invoicing routine, the data for each plot accumulates. So what would then happen is when you do run the routine, as it goes down each plot, it would assess the completed deal and go right for deal 123, customer 100, whatever. It would look and see that we had uninvoiced meter readings that were ready to be invoiced for 3 of the meter types for that customer, and it would pick all 3 and compile them into a single invoice. And that's actually its kind of standard behavior. It's there to accumulate all of them. You can force it to only invoice 1 at a time, but to be fair, we've never come across anyone who would sort of want to post out 3 bills when 1 would do. So yes, you can definitely achieve that goal. Yes.
Yeah, perfect, great. So can we correct readings after they have been taken?
Yes, certainly. I kind of touched on it as I went through the demonstration, but didn't elaborate. Basically, the meter ledger entries screen, I mentioned you could provide administrative access to that screen. Basically, there is a user permission that can be granted to the appropriate responsible user in the EliteParks user setup record to allow them to edit the meter readings. Now, you can't just go into that screen and, for example, delete meter readings out of it. But what you can do, for example, is change the actual reading that's been taken. So you can't change the previous reading, but you could change the new reading, and also you can change the date that the reading was taken on, and you can change the completed deal that applies, which can be handy. For example, if a part exchange has kind of jumped in between the meter readings batch and all of a sudden the original deal is now not active because they've just bought a new one, a new van, and there's a new deal applied. So yes, you can provide some limited controlled access, and it's also sort of controlled by a permission on the user. So you do have the ability to make the edits you need, but also you'll have the ability to make sure it's done by the responsible users that you deem fit to do it. Yes.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, so the final question that has come through, can we put all the meters on one batch so that the team can record all the readings as they go around the park?
For sure, yes. Now, we always recommend that you sort of batch by meter type, but it's not strictly necessary. It's something that you should actually sort of perhaps give some thought to your operational processes before you make the choice of how to do the batching. So if your meters are all sort of connected to each individual plot, so that the your readers go to each individual plot and all 3 meters are present, yeah, you would certainly choose in that case to just batch by park or by area of the park. When you populate your journal, the only thing you would need to do slightly differently from the demonstration is on this request page that says how am I going to populate my journal, there's the option to limit the meter type, and you would just leave that blank, and then you would run the report and all the meters that applied to each plot would appear on the same journal. You print that on the meter reading sheet and give it to the operative to walk around the park and collect them all at the same time. Yeah, for sure.
Great, perfect. All right. Yeah, so that's the last of the questions. Thank you very much, Chris, for your time today and your answers. I just want to remind our customers that if you've got any follow-up questions with regards to this functionality which we've presented today, to get in touch with your account manager, so either Jermaine or Nicola, and they'll be able to answer your questions and perhaps even arrange sort of a demonstration one-to-one with you. So yeah, thank you very much. My name's Harriet, and thanks again, Chris, for your time today. And yeah, have a great day and hope to see you on the next webinar. Goodbye now.
You're welcome, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.